What if you were out on a run and the man walking toward you stepped into the shadows and never came back out? That happened to me about 15 years ago. I was 17 at the time, living in Scotland, and I used to run the same route pretty often. It started in my village, went out along a quiet road past farms and woods, and eventually brought me back home. It was mid-December, around 5 in the evening. Not completely dark yet, but close. The kind of light where everything feels colder, quieter, emptier. I was maybe 2.5 miles into the run when I came onto a stretch of road with an old farm building on my right and a field behind a hedge on my left. There were woods further ahead, and aside from a few remote houses, the whole area was pretty isolated. As I kept running, I noticed a man walking toward me. At first, there was nothing obviously strange about him. He had a beanie on, a dull-looking jacket, and his head was slightly lowered. He was broad-shouldered, strongly built, and for some reason he reminded me of one of my friends. As we got closer, he stepped slightly to the side and moved into the shadow of the old farm building. That alone shouldn't have bothered me, but something about it did. I pulled my headphones out, I slowed down, then I started walking. And by the time I got close enough to where he should have been, he was gone. Not further down the road, not crossing into the field, not standing by the wall, just gone. I stopped and looked properly. The building beside me was old sandstone, and there weren't any open doors. There was one old doorway that had been bricked up, but that was it. No entrance, no opening, no obvious place where someone could have disappeared in those few seconds without me seeing it. I just stood there for a moment, trying to work out what I'd missed. At that point, I had two choices. I could either turn back toward a nearby house where I knew the people living there, or keep going and run home through the road with woods on both sides. I decided to keep running. When I got home, I told my mother what had happened, and she didn't believe me. She thought I was tired, or that the fading light had messed with my eyes, or that I just lost track of the man for a second and imagined the rest. And honestly, that should have been the end of it. But the next day, she mentioned the story at work. One of her coworkers listened carefully, then pulled her aside afterward and asked her to describe the man again. So she did. The height, the build, the hat, the road, the time. And apparently, the woman went pale, because her husband's father had been cremated that very day. She told my mother that before he died, he used to walk that same road home every evening after work. Same route, same habit, for years. A couple of days later, I saw a notice in the paper confirming that he had in fact been cremated on the same day I saw him. I've gone back to that road many times since, and I've never seen anything like it again. No one stepping into the shadows, no figure on the road, nothing. Just that one evening, that one man, and the moment he disappeared, and never came back out. Once, a family member of mine and I were on our way to visit a grave at an old cemetery in the countryside. It was a small, quiet place attached to a church that was barely used anymore. But the cemetery itself was still active. People were still being buried there, so it wasn't abandoned or ruined. Just old, remote, and very still. As we walked up the gravel path toward the gate, I looked over the wall and noticed a man moving between the graves. At first, there was nothing unusual about him. He looked like he was probably in his late 20s or early 30s, wearing dark trousers or jeans and a jumper. Just a normal person walking through a cemetery. That alone didn't seem strange. But as we got closer to the gate, he suddenly looked up. And the second he saw us, his face changed. I still don't know how else to describe it except rage, not confusion, not surprise, not curiosity. He looked furious. Then he started running. Not walking faster, not hurrying over. Running. He sprinted across the row of graves and then onto the path leading straight toward the gate where we were standing. And the strangest part is, neither of us reacted properly. We didn't scream, we didn't run, we didn't even step back. We just froze. I remember pointing at him and trying to get words out, but I couldn't. My family member had only just noticed him too, and by then, it was obvious from the way he was moving that he was coming straight at us. It genuinely felt like he was about to attack us. He kept getting closer, fast. And then, before he reached the last few yards between us, he disappeared. Completely. 1 second he was there, sprinting directly toward us. The next second, there was nothing on the path at all. He hadn't turned away. He hadn't ducked behind a gravestone. He hadn't gone past us. He was just gone. Only after that did the shock really hit. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely think. My hands were shaking, and I remember bending over trying to catch my breath. And the first clear thought that came into my head was relief. Because as terrifying as it was to think I might have just seen a ghost, that still felt safer than the idea that a very real man had almost reached us in the middle of an isolated cemetery. I've been back there since, a couple of times, and nothing like that has ever happened again. What stayed with me most wasn't that he looked ghostly. It was the opposite. He looked completely normal. Until he vanished.